Hey guys, yeah, so I recorded a pretty good video like 4 months ago and thought I'd bring it back up. So this is going to be a repost of a video I did about 4 months ago. It was a Galilean kind of theme pre-trib explanation, Galilean wedding. And the reason why is because I thought this video was pretty good. It's one of those videos that got buried in the past, and you might be a new viewer and you might not have bumped into this video. So I think it's a really important one to see. Sort of solidifies pre-trib rapture, but the other interesting thing about the timing of this video is it really connects to Passover, which is right around the corner for us. So without further ado, I will post this video. And yeah, just to remind you, just Jesus, he basically said, I'm not going to drink this cup until I see you in the clouds, right? Basically, until I drink it with you again. And so that's a Passover thing, that's a wedding thing. And so here we are approaching Passover, and there's so many Galilean themes and so many wedding themes in the Bible, and we are approaching that. So I will post the video, and we'll talk soon. Go Jesus, go!
It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine.
Well, guys, it's the end of the world. Yeah. Oh yeah. 2 scoops of hallelujah, 1 scoop of praise the Lord. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do a long video or a short video. I'm just going to talk, and we'll see what happens. I wanted to focus on the Galilean wedding and the culture of that time and how this connects with the pre-trib rapture of the church. And we're going to go through times, especially as the days go on, that we're going to start second guessing stuff, and we're going to need to be reminded of certain things that we already know, or taught new things that we haven't understood yet. And so the thing that really brought me to understand the rapture of the church was all the bride and bridegroom analogies in the Bible. But I finally got around to watching Before the Wrath. I was like, wow, yeah, there's some more connections in there that I actually didn't know. And so I thought I would just bring them up to you and remind you of the confidence that we have, the blessed hope. And I don't know how many points I have. I have around 25 points of things to say here. But let's get started, all right? So Jesus, much of his ministry was in Galilee, all right? So if you were in Canada, there are things within a culture that you would only understand in your Canadian culture. For example, I like to say as a joke, keep your stick on the ice, bud. But what that means is keep your hockey stick on the ice so that if somebody passes you the puck, you could get the puck. Because if you don't have your stick on the ice, the puck's going to fly right by you. You're not going to get the pass, you're not going to get the puck, and you can't score a goal there, bud. Okay? So culturally, Canadians would understand what keep your stick on the ice means. But if you said that to a guy in Brazil, he would have no clue. What are you talking about? Keep my stick on? Why would I keep my stick in the? Are we fishing? What are we doing here? Are we fighting on the ice? What's going on, right? So you have to understand the culture. And Jesus was heavily engaged in Galilee. All right, so let's learn about their culture. Let's learn the things. So that now, if we understand the culture, now when you read the Bible, like, oh my goodness, this all makes sense. This pre-trib makes so much sense. Pre-trib rapture. Okay, so Jesus was born in the town of Bethlehem. But did you know it was in the region of Galilee? I didn't really quite know that. Like, I knew these things, but I'm actually now officially confirming how powerful Galilee is in the culture of Galilee. So Bethlehem, he was born in Bethlehem in the region of Galilee. In Luke 2 verse 4, you can find that. Point number 2, Mary was betrothed to Joseph. Okay, so this is another thing too, weddings in Galilee. So she was betrothed, so she was engaged to Joseph in Luke 2 verse 5 is your reference point for that. Now, of course, an angel showed up to Mary, and we know the story of how Jesus and Mary, Jesus was born from Mary, and but Joseph didn't understand this at first, and he was going to divorce her. Now, he wasn't even married yet. This shows you how powerful betrothal is. Betrothal is kind of like an engagement, which we'll talk about in a second. But in our culture, this is basically around the whole world now, but I would say safely North American culture, how we do it is a man generally proposes to a woman, offers her a ring, to become engaged? Well, it's very actually similar to a Galilean wedding, where there's a betrothal. It's a very similar kind of a concept. But at that time, you were supposed to be faithful during your betrothal process. So if you're not faithful, the man could divorce his wife or vice versa, and they can call off the wedding during that time, right? So Joseph was going to basically call off the wedding, Matthew 1 verse 19. The reason why I just bring this up because it's part of the wedding stuff in the Galilean culture. But then Joseph finds out, oh no, this was a supernatural thing. Okay, no, that's all right. We're gonna stay betrothed, and eventually they got married. Okay, so Jesus grew up in the town of Nazareth in the region of Galilee. So he's born in Bethlehem in the region of Galilee, and then he grew up in Nazareth in the region of Galilee. And in John 1 verse 46, we have a reference of that. They say, because can anything good come out of Nazareth, right? So they knew he came from the region of Galilee. Mark 1 verse 9 is another reference point for that. Okay. Jesus' disciples were Galilean. Now this is way more exciting to me. I knew these things, but it's like they were Galilean. Everything was Galilean. Everything, all the culture started there. So the disciples were his audience. The people that he was speaking to and preaching to and teaching were Galilean. So he already had a starting point. So again, when he was saying, keep your stick on the ice, bud, they all like, yes, we know he's talking about hockey. Okay, got it. So when he said no one knows the day of the hour, like, got it. He's talking about a wedding, right? And when he's doing the Last Supper, got it. He's talking about a wedding because they knew there's cultural things I'm going to talk about. He talked about a wedding way more than we actually realize as Gentile believers, as Canadian believers, as United States believers, as whatever believer, Australian, okay? So much of the Gospels were wedding-y things that we didn't actually even know. All right. So, yeah, it goes on to say in Mark 1 verse 39, and he preached in the synagogues throughout Galilee. He was just moving and grooving around Galilee. This is important for us to know. Galilee is such a big deal. Jesus' first miracle was at a wedding in Cana of Galilee, of which he changed water into wine. Overall, the big message here is, I think I've made it clear, much of Jesus' ministry and audience was Galilean. All right, so we know the context, we know the culture, we know his disciples are Galilean. He's walking around Galilee. He was born in that area. He grew up in that area. Boom. This is important. Okay, so now let's talk about Galilean weddings. In a Galilean town, when a betrothal was announced, everyone would rush to come and witness it. So this is a big deal. Unlike our culture, generally when people get engaged, it's usually a private thing. And then later on they tell everybody that they got engaged, although sometimes it's public. But in Galilean, it was always a public affair. When a betrothal happened, it was a public affair. They were like, "Oh, look, there's a betrothal happening. Everybody run and go see it. We all want to go watch this thing." And there would be elders, and they would do this at the gates of the town so that there was witnesses. They really wanted witnesses to see this betrothal take place. This was not a quiet thing. They wanted to see that the whole steps take place. So at this betrothal, this public betrothal in the town, in towns of Galilee, what happened was that it was a proposal. And when a young man wished to marry a young woman, the first step would be the establishment of a marriage contract. That would be paid by the father of the groom, of which the price to be negotiated between both fathers. All right, so we have a gathering. They're doing this public engagement, and the community is involved. It's not just a private thing between the groom and the bride. Sometimes these marriages were arranged. The fathers were very heavily involved in this whole exchange. And once this marriage contract was read, gifts were exchanged between everybody involved. The highest gift given to the bride. Next point here, a dowry was insurance in the event anything would happen to the groom. So this is a serious event. They're basically guaranteeing their faithfulness to each other, the groom and the bride, through this whole process. It's almost like it's almost like they are getting married with this whole process here. It's just they're kind of getting married almost like this is the contract now, but then later it will actually happen. It's kind of like a step above engagement in our culture. But anyway, the bridegroom is handed a pitcher of wine and offers it to his bride. Well, the bride-to-be, which is called the cup of joy. Okay, so the groom offers the bride something called the cup of joy. And this is the time when the bride, after she's read the contract or they speak it out loud, the bride has the choice to accept or reject the marriage covenant by drinking the cup of joy. That's exactly like us. When we're talking about coming to Christ and having a salvation prayer, it's very similar to this exact moment of receiving the cup of joy. When you accept Jesus into your heart and you do that and you confirm with your mouth, it's saying, I accept this marriage covenant that Jesus gave to me on the cross, right? And so if she drinks it, she accepts the contract, and more or less at that point, they're going to get married. And then the groom would drink it as well and confirm the marriage covenant. But then at that point, the groom says, you are now consecrated to me by the laws of Moses, and I will not drink of this cup again until I drink anew with you in my Father's house. So we've got a contract. We got a contract. We have agreement. Free will has been there, and by their free will, they are agreeing to enter this marriage covenant. And so, I think I just said this, but I'll say it again. You are now consecrated to me by the law of Moses, and I will not drink this cup again until I drink it anew with you in my Father's house. Now this sounds like the Last Supper. Matthew 26, verse 29. Jesus says this, right? He says exactly that. Actually, I'll read it. It's right here. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. He's using wedding analogies through and through everything he's gotten here, right? And then in John 14, 1 through 4, let me get that too. He's saying, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. Let me just pause this. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. This is also a wedding analogy because that's what the groom does. He goes and builds a place at his father's house for approximately a year or so, however long the betrothal is. He builds a place for his bride to eventually come and take her and bring her there. Sorry about the background noise if there's kids running around. Okay, so yeah, the next point here, I might have just said this. The groom would then leave and prepare a place at his father's house. This time was generally around 1 year long, give or take. All right, the bride would also spend time preparing her gown and was told to be ready because she did not know exactly when the groom would come and get her. We all know the famous line, nobody knows the day of the hour. That's a wedding analogy. It's exactly directed to the culture of the Galileans. So everybody knew he was talking about a wedding. Only the father of the groom would know the timing of the wedding and would have the final say as to when to get the bride. One sec. I don't know where I was. I think I'm here. All right. Often the groom and his entourage would blow a shofar and come at midnight or in the middle of the night to get his bride. They're blowing shofars in the middle of the night. Nobody knows the day except for the father, and they're coming at an hour that you would least expect, so during the time that people would be sleeping. Matthew 25, verse 6, behold, the bridegroom is coming, go out to meet him. So there's just all these wedding analogies here, right? And only those who are ready and watching, spiritually ready, that is, would accompany the groom and the bride to this wedding event. So we've got some bridesmaids waiting with the bride. Of course, they had a general idea of when he was coming, but not exactly. They didn't really know the exact minute. They were just meant to be ready, always be ready. And so when the father said, go and get your bride, They would come down the streets, blow their shofars, and the bridegroom would then place the bride in a seat. And it's called a litter. And in this seat, the bride would be carried to the wedding chamber where the marriage is consummated. So, and a litter is a wheelless vehicle for the transport of persons. So it's kind of like like a rickshaw without wheels, and you'd be carried. Okay, so the bride was lifted into the air to go to the wedding chamber, to go to the wedding. Isn't that crazy? That's amazing. That's cool. The bride wasn't dragged through the streets and punched in the face by the groom. She was lifted by at least two people, if not more, and carried away. And this moment is called flying the bride to the Father's house. Again, it was called flying the bride to the Father's house. I mean, what else spells rapture than that? Isn't that cool? It's so cool. And then we all are familiar with 1 Thessalonians 4:17, talking about this stuff getting caught up, and 1 Corinthians 15:52. Another good reference for that. Okay, so once they arrived, they would walk into their wedding bed chamber and be given their privacy to consummate their marriage physically. The door to the wedding would be shut, and any latecomers would literally be shut out from the wedding. The guests would meet and greet, and once the consummation was complete, the bridegroom would bring out their bed sheets. If there was blood, it was a time for the guests to rejoice because the bride has kept herself a virgin and her hymen was indeed broken. The shedding of this blood sealed their physical covenant. If there was no blood, there was no wedding. It was considered a permanent, eternal seal between them. So after it was confirmed she had waited for her groom, the wedding celebration would continue for 7 days. Now, I took this off a website, which I'll link below. I was actually taking things from a lot of websites and things like that, trying to understand the culture, because a lot of this stuff you can't find directly from the Bible. You've got to look at other sources for Galilean wedding cultural stuff. And this reminds me of Revelation 19:7 when it's talking about the marriage supper of the Lamb. And to me, I'm speculating that Matthew 22 is an invitation to the tribulation saints, an invitation to the guests of the wedding, right? So I think this really explains the marriage supper of the Lamb, the bride of Christ. The rapture is this special event. It's almost as if the bride and the bridegroom and the close family and friends that really have an understanding of what's going on, the ones that are awake, the ones that are a part of everything, are going to this ceremony, right? This place in the clouds. And there's also an invitation to the guests, but some are sleeping and some are awake, and you've got to be ready. You've got to be ready. So this, anyway, the main point of all this is it really explains pre-trib rapture. This whole wedding analogy, I think it's amazing. One of the last verses in the Bible that I read is, "The Spirit and the bride say, come." If you look at the Bible and read everything now in the light of this and understand the Galilean wedding culture, you're going to understand the rapture, and you can't unsee it at that point. As far as the timing of the rapture, I don't know. We're all just guessing and speculating. A bride would be doing that, though. When a bride eagerly waiting for her bridegroom would be at some point saying, "Okay, it's been a year, and if I remember the character of the bridegroom and stuff like this, maybe I'm going to start guessing at this point because it's got to be so close." And making the final arrangements on the gown and all that kind of stuff. So as the days go on, it looks harder and harder, and you might start second guessing this whole pre-trib rapture. Be encouraged. It's going to happen. It's so awesome. And it's in the character of Christ to come back and take care of this. And he's going to be glorified through this whole process. Hopefully a couple things that I said solidified some pre-trib rapture beliefs. Hold fast. See in the clouds. One day closer. Eyes on Jesus. Do not worry. Go, Jesus, go. See you in the clouds. Bye.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.